Today we're in Brighton on the south coast of England for a studio tour with one of the most interesting and successful contemporary stained glass artists working in the field of public art. He has an established reputation and a long list of awards, including several internationally acclaimed Coda Awards. One of his many defining features as a contemporary glass artist of stature is a very identifiable style all his own. It is, of course, the one and only Martin Donlin. This studio tour has been a long time in the making, and I do hope you enjoy it.
I can get out of bed and roll in here, so
you can be in your Jimmy Jammies and nobody would ever know.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, as anyone who works from home knows.
Yeah, it is.
Because you can start and end up being here till 10 o'clock at night and still thinking, I've got to finish this, or I want to finish this, is more to the point.
Are you structured? I mean, do you have a time that you get up and you kind of come in and work and then,
no,
or is it very organic?
Very organic, and I think it depends what's on. It depends if there's a particular deadline or whatever. Then I'll get up early and work late, and I love it. This is what I love to do. This was an interesting project. It was in Germany, and it was a congregation they all had different ideas about what they wanted, and some of them wanted traditional things, some of them wanted more contemporary things, and it was really strange because I thought, well, I'll go back, and I had just this one design with lots and lots of different colorways, and they all chose this one. We left. I think this is with Wilhelm Diericks, and he said no, they all liked this one, but he said they like it. He said they trust you. He said it's a good thing. He said it's a good thing, but he said the thing is, he said they don't have any money, and I said, oh, okay, and he said that they've said to us. Because we're driving along, and they said to us, would we do this? He said, we will get a reward in another life. And I said, well, I've done my design. I said, my job is done. I said, I'd be happy to do that. And he said, the amount of people that have said that to me, he said, when I get to the other side, he said, I'm going to be a rich man. But it's one of those things, and it said, but he said they said that they'll pray for the money, and but he said whether we do it or not. But I said, well, I'm happy if you've got to make it. It's a small window, but if you've got to do it, and he did do it, and he made it, and William's lovely, was that sort of person. But when it was installed, they had a kind of celebration, and they said that the prayers were answered. They said that someone sadly had passed away, but they left money for the window. So the power of prayer.
There you go. Fantastic.
And that is why, Derek, I have my saints.
Oh, I love it.
I've got the biggest rosary collection. And the Blessed Virgin.
Man, you're not hedging your bets, are you?
Yeah. No, it's smoking. So, no. But it's yeah. But you never know. You never know, do you? The power of prayer.
Fantastic. I love it. These are brilliant.
They're good fun. I love them. Yeah, I must admit they're.
I get asked whether I am religious if I'm doing glass projects, and I'm honest and say that I'm not. And I often wonder if that's going to hold me back, but people are pretty cool about it.
Yeah.
Are you religious? Are you?
Well, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I absolutely love it. I know that it's also the biggest cause of trouble on the planet, with religions and stuff like that. But theatre, I just felt, as a child, I remember me and my brother being in a church, and I remember seeing this sort of dust in colour. And I was going, what's that? And he said, atmosphere. And it was kind of like, it's just lovely. It's like, maybe that was why I got into stained glass, I don't know. But it was kind of, I just loved it. And there was the smell of incense and the amount of prayer that's been
absolutely
projected onto that.
Yeah.
Maybe some will
some will rub off on us sinners.
Yeah. On us sinners. Yeah. This is the new garden room in the basement of our house, and yeah, we're not quite sure what we're going to use it for yet, but we're going to fight over that. It's either going to be a ceramic studio or mosaic, maybe some glass, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. This is I've made so many of these over the years, and they just go in the dustbin. People say, you know, can we hang on to it? But this one I managed to get back, but it's very, very simple and very, very effective, because you sort of get this out and people say, oh yeah, look, now we can see what's it look like when the light comes through it. Where we're standing now is just a simple garden room. Just sort of the house is strange because you come in on one level and then you come down to the basement to the garden. So we always had this idea that we'd move some things from dirty areas through here into this kind of space, which is just, it could be anything really. In here I've got an idea to start playing with mosaic. We might do that in here. But otherwise it could be a design space, somewhere to screen print, lots and lots of different things that we can play around with. So these are some of the glass samples for the Glazier's Hall, the new entrance to the banqueting hall. And these were some preliminary ideas that we had, that it was going to be something that was cast. We could have cast glass on the surface. It's the same image that's in the painting that's on the glass in the front. So it's just been cast very, very lightly and heat polished. But the glass itself works as, just against a plain wall, which indeed it is. And we had a number of samples, some with different intensities of shadow. There was a very dark one. This was a little lighter. We did it all digitally as a presentation, but this is the sort of thing that we had. So these were kind of first impressions. This one, I think, was the one we went with in the end. It hasn't got so much shadow on, but I presented these kind of ideas that told you the story of the whole piece. There's all these figures at the top, and it had to represent the Glazier's company, the worshipful company of launderers, and the worshipful company of instrument makers. And they all use the hall, although the Glaziers are based there. So it sort of represented activities that were going on throughout all of those different liveries. And it's kind of a collage, so you just see lots and lots of different things overlaid with other images. The location was important. This is Southwark Cathedral here, which is where the Glazier's Hall is. And there are a number of rivers that flow into the Thames, because they're right on the Thames. They're right on London Bridge here. This is an image of Old Father Thames here, and all of these words, all of these names, the rivers, tributaries that are around London move towards the Thames. And it starts with the sun at this end and the moon at this end. So it's about the passage of time, the journey of a day. But I think for me and for you too, Derek, it's like the materials. What are we going to use? What sort of thing will work best for this situation? What's gonna make this sing and really be powerful in that space?
And how has your work evolved over the years? Because as we were talking earlier, you started off doing a lot of etched work, very monochrome. It was textures of glass, I think.
Yeah, this is a piece of acid etched. Can you see it from where you are?
Yeah.
Acid etched, acid polished, and screen printed. So it's working on both surfaces. We've got the text on the front surface here that you can just about see. There's a tiny, tiny little lens. It's actually not a lens. That was actually something we just slumped in the kiln. But in this was a sample for the Surrey History Centre.
This is when I was first introduced to you many years ago. This is the type of work that I started to see you doing. This incredible use of what I call French embossing. I don't know if you call it French embossing.
No, that was it, exactly.
And it was a reinvention of it. You were kind of taking that traditional kind of like, the stuff that you kind of maybe see in pubs in London, those beautiful, brilliant cut panels, and you were kind of bringing text in it and kind of contemporary images into it.
I did. I fell in love with the sort of gym palaces of London. Well, they're glass. But this I think is kind of triple embossing. But it was, rather than it being very decorative and floral, it was just splashing bits of resist on glass. The silk screen on the back is all bitumen just through a silk screen, and very, very simple stuff. Yeah, not that easy to control, and I think over time the restrictions for using acid have gone crazy. And I remember as a student we could buy a carboy of hydrofluoric acid, put it on the back seat of the car and take it back to the studio.
Those days have gone now.
Those days are sadly gone. Well, gladly gone, because it's dangerous, dangerous stuff. Colour has become very, very important, and it's interesting. I think as a student, I was quite frightened of colour, of applying things. We had a wonderful tutor, Glenys Kaur, who was kind of, sometimes she'd be sort of like looking at other people's work, and she'd say, you know, we went into all these colour theories, etc. But it was kind of, how do I apply that? What can I do with this? And it's just having a freedom, just being free to start saying, okay, I'm gonna let myself go and try something. And I think as the years have gone by, you begin to hone them down. And I like to work in what I call kind of families of colours, so that you move from different areas of a piece that tell you different stories, and then you move to something maybe that's a complementary colour, etc. But it's very, very important to what I do now, and I think, having seen some of the things that you can do with the materials in glass, it's just a very, very expressive thing to do, to actually work with antique glass, where you can choose a myriad of colours and do different things with them. This of course is antique glass. So this is a wonderful opalescent glass. This is acid etched. It was red. There's been acid etched back to white, and then some orange and some pink applied. This was for a project in London that didn't happen actually, but I've got another sample that's in the bathroom. But they're samples that I've managed to keep hold of, because so many samples just disappear, that the architect or the planner or the art consultant hangs on to them, and then at the end of the day they just disappear into skips, etc. But this would be a high-end material. So this is antique glass that's been acid etched and painted and silver stained, and then bonded onto a toughened and laminated glass.
How did you get involved with glass to start with?
That came from art school, so from Medway College of Design, where I studied a foundation course, which was great. It was a course that took you through all the disciplines, from photography to printmaking, sculpture, fine art, painting, not glass, but ceramics certainly. But I think I did that, and I didn't know what to do at the end of it. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I always wanted to be John Singer Sargent. I wanted to be a society portrait painter. And A, I wasn't in society, and B, I wasn't that good. So I worked in a dockyard for 4 or 5 years actually. But all the while I was there, I was doing life drawing at night, and trying to work out where I wanted to go with things. But I discovered, I found by chance a magazine, I think it was World of Interiors, and they had in the centre, they had a thing about stained glass. And I remember reading the thing that is still the biggest influence on me, was the idea of that with paintings, we look at a painting with reflected light, but with stained glass, it's received light, so it's pure colour. And but I saw some of these artists. They went from everything from Patrick Ranchins to Brian Clark, more contemporary. But there were a few in between. There was someone called Alex Belashenko. There was Rodney Bender and Tim Lewis. Tim Lewis was very important to me, and I loved the images that they showed, the colours and the styles. It looked very, very contemporary. He said there was a very, very good course in West Glamorgan. I thought, well, okay, I'll go and take a look. And I was, to say blown away sounds like a cliche, but it was quite extraordinary what I found there. And I was also very, very pleased to hear that lots of these names that I've read in this article, Alex Belashenko, Rodney Bender, Tim Lewis, were actually lecturers there. And I thought, well, this is obviously the place. And I started, but I got, I think to about the first semester to Christmas, or it might have been Easter. And I sort of thought, well, I'm actually not very good at this. And I was thinking maybe I need to think about something else. You know, not all is not lost. I was on a grant and everything. But the course leader, Tim Lewis, very kindly, he kind of took me under his belt and he said, you can come to my studio the weekends. And slowly but surely, it did improve, and I got really good at it. And I did work for him for a little while when I left. But it was that sort of encouragement just to say, look, keep at it, keep trying. But I don't remember them teaching design. I might be wrong, but we had a wonderful art colorist called Glenys Core that worked there. We had traditional glass painters, Colwyn Morris and John Edwards. These were fantastic artists in their own right. Most of them worked for themselves. They did their own thing and they taught. One of the things that was a big influence was that at the time, Rodney and Alex had live commissions. They had real commissions. And we were, as any student, we were like around them like flies and saying, well, look, how do you go about getting a commission? How much do you charge? Where do you make it? And it was just too much for them, I'm sure. But it was just fascinating to see these things going on. And at the same time, when they needed help, they would come to us and say, well, you know, we've got a weekend where you could be doing this, that and the other, and then back in college on Monday. And a wonderful environment, really, really encouraging environment. And I think I learned such a lot about all sorts of things to do with glass, particularly with the craft. And ironically, it's something that I do very, very rarely now. So when I left, Alex took a sabbatical and asked me if I'd do a day a week for him, teaching acid, because I got very into using acid etching and sandblasting on glass. And slowly but surely, projects were beginning to happen. And so I packed in the teaching. I did it for nearly 2 years, just part-time, a couple of days here and there, but which I really enjoyed. But I think my own work was beginning to take off, and it was fantastic. As I was saying, I was trying to build my own studio to make my own work. And it was a project that I think I won it. I can't remember how it came about. But it was, I'd suggested a long column of glass. It was in a new development. The idea was to draw people in to rent the space. And the idea was to have a long column of glass that would be about 1 metre wide and about 5 metres high. And I remember talking to some people saying, oh yeah, a big wooden frame, maybe something like that would be good. And I was going to make all this myself. But the timescale did look very tight, and I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need to get on with it. But that's, as I said, that was when I met up with Detlef Pilz at Peters. And I did say, he said, we could do this in all antique, but he said maybe suspend it on cables. But it was a very interesting conversation, because I said, usually when I go to make a presentation, I want to have all the answers. If they're going to ask me a tricky question, I've got to answer it. And he was kind of, why? And I said, well, you know, I need to gain their confidence, and they need to trust me. And he said, tell him you don't know. He said, tell him you get an engineer to do that. And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to try this. And I remember making this presentation, and they did say that. They said, well, how is it all going to who's going to make the safety sort of regulations about this? And I said, well, we'll get an engineer. But I did say, when they said, what are you going to hang it off of, and what's it going to be secured to? I said, I don't know. I've no idea. And it was kind of liberating to not know, rather than to have all the answers to say, we'll work it out. But it was beautiful. I remember seeing it, going over to see it, and I just thought, wow. It looked so much better than what I could have done. And I was so pleased. That was the first job that I'd done with Peters, and it started a number of other projects then. I just thought, well, maybe I'll concentrate on design. Maybe if I can, I'll start to play with glass. But I'm not going to go into this big production thing. So I guess that was a really good one. It's interesting, it's gone. It's another one. It's another one that's disappeared. I was going to go and take some pictures and see how it was doing. And it was right on a main road in Slough, and I went past on Google Earth, whatever it is, and the building is gone. The whole corner of the street has completely been redeveloped. So whatever happened to that piece of glass, I don't know, but it's a real shame. As projects got larger, I began to realise that I needed help. A project came along in Indianapolis, and that kind of changed everything for me.
We're kicking off the art installation project for you to see a phenomenal work, a collection of works, pieces of glass with poetry, color, motion, all integrated into the building. Art was not an afterthought in our project. It's integrated into our structure and in all of our thinking. So that's what we'll show you today, weather willing.
It was a big project. It was $500,000 for each concourse. They had 2 concourses in this airport, and it was the first airport that was built in America since 9/11. But it was kind of a wonderful thing that technology was changing, but I still wanted to use antique glass. I thought antique glass would be perfect here. But then, yeah, it was about bonding it, how we bond it to toughened glass and marry these ideas of having to have all of these restrictions, what we call restrictions, what I was calling restrictions, that were necessities for this new building, with traditional materials. And of course, there was a way, as with all those things. But in the presentation, the architect said, Alpha said, we want you to work with someone local or with a local community. So they said, how are you going to do that? And it was a thought that because of the internet today, we can do that. We can actually say, okay, I could work with a writers group. So that people could write stories or about travel, about flying, about homecoming or adventure, and I would take these stories and then interpret them into some artworks. And some of them, the idea was that some of them, the poems would be etched onto the glass. Others would be more kind of esoteric, and they would be abstracted, but just based on these thoughts. They loved it, and she said, "Yeah, we want you to do it." But she said, "We want you to do the West concourse and the East," and that added up to $1 million project. And I remember traveling home and thinking, well, how am I going to get this done in my little studio with me and maybe some part-timers? And I thought, no, I need to look much further than this. And it actually went to tender. All the companies were German: Dierix, Peters, and Franz Mayer of Munich. But Myers won the project. That project was a very, very special project to me because it took me down all kinds of avenues that I'd never thought existed. And CNN, to the news people, then CBS are coming over to see us, and it's like, what? But they were so big on publicity and informing people, and we installed some glass and they filmed it, and then it was down to the newspapers, and it was just about keeping the public informed, and they loved it. It went down very well. It helped with all of the publicity and information that they were putting out to everyone.
The great thing that I wish was over here is the percentage for art.
Oh,
that
yeah.
finances so much public art, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Is it still in place in the States?
In a lot of states. They have that same theory that, this is for our people. This is to make the city feel like a much, it's been considered and that people want to be here. And it works. People respect the artwork. There's not graffiti over stuff. And it's a really, really art-filled environment. And in my lifetime, and in yours too, I've seen the decline of all of the regional arts bodies. You know, I remember when I started, you know, I was applying to different art bodies saying, you know, do you have projects, anything in glass? And they'd all have slide libraries. They'd all have their own collections of things. And even the Crafts Council, they still do, but they've all disappeared. There used to be an arts officer that looked after this stuff, made sure that they were maintained, etc. And they've disappeared. So what happens? You know, you're just leaving all this artwork on the street, and any developer can come along and say, well, I don't like it, that's it, it goes. Whereas in America, you're under contract, you sign a contract to say, if it's moved, you have a say in where it goes, etc., and or how you'd like it to be displayed. So that if someone does move something, you think, well, maybe they'd need some advice.
But it's treating the art like a piece of heritage that should be preserved, you know,
exactly.
Because it's just as valid as anything that was made in the 19th, 18th or 17th century,
Yes,
isn't it?
exactly, yeah.
Is it your experience that you can visualize how an idea will look in glass really easily because you know the material, but convincing someone who's maybe not seen how glass behaves and all they're looking at is a board?
Yeah.
Have you found sometimes that a challenge, and how have you overcome that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think I very much, I bet like yourself, Derek, it's kind of like, I've got one eye on what I'm designing and one eye on what it's going to look like. But when I say that what it's going to look like, it's not just like choosing the colour of a wall that's been painted. It's the material. What is this going to look like? Is this? It could be a mirror. It could be something that's translucent. It could be something that's transparent. It could be something that's opaque. Depending again on the function of that building. Maybe somebody wants to create a screen that masks a view. And sometimes people say we still want to be able to see outside. We want to be able to have a contact with outside. And the big one is we want it to work day and night. And there are so many things that people say, and I've always got that idea thinking, okay, how is this going to work? How can I make this actually work? And the key to it is samples, making samples. And I've always said that we make something tangible that we can pick up, take to the place, even if it's a building site, and see how it works in this light, see what happens.
What do you think working in collaboration with studios has brought to your work?
I think my initial thoughts were like losing the control of what you're going to do, and thinking that I don't want this to, I've got particularly, as I showed you before, with this deep sandblasting and acid etching, it's particular. To tell someone how to do it would be difficult. And so I think a lot of things I used to try and make a sample, make a sort of like a control sample. But as projects progressed, I do remember seeing work that was done in all of the German studios with antique glass, and I just thought they can translate absolutely anything that I could do and do it 10 times better, 10 times quicker. It wasn't just the German studios, because in this country, shortly after I left college, Rodney Bender introduced me to David Proto. I think between us, we were both kind of feeling our way, and it was a real wonderful collaboration there too. That most of the projects I had, David would be rolling his eyes. I'd say, "Oh, I've got this new project, fantastic project," you know, and it's like, then I'd mention the budget, and it'd be like, "Oh, right, how are we going to do that?" And well, you want to make some money at this, do you? And you think, yeah, well, a little bit, but we managed to do things, but simply by cutting, tearing paper, and making resists on glass, and repeating screens, etc. And they all came out fantastic. With this one, that was in a project at Seaford, just down the road. This was a sample for that, but it's only to be seen from one side. So
okay.
it goes against the sort of stained glass windows, but it does work. And it was a low budget. They wanted to draw people into the church, which you can see from the front rather than from the side. So you could still, but it's very, very durable, and it's very, very inexpensive. So you can still do something with it, and you can mix and marry it with different techniques. Obviously you could sandblast the front of it or use some painted areas, etc. This is in South Hill Park Art Centre, which is in Bracknell,
Yeah.
in Berkshire. And but this was an early design that was from a watercolour. But it's lovely. It's lovely quality of glass. It just faces. It's like that. It's a skylight, so you don't actually see it. But it's a really lovely glass.
But I remember you've got lots of beautiful wandering lines throughout this whole piece as well, haven't you?
Yes, oh yeah, and it was based upon, it was a sky. It's a funny photograph because it looks like a swimming pool, but that's it there.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this piece. I think it's fantastic because there's so much space in the design. It's so open. You know, there's obviously the focus of attention over on the far left, but then there's this beautiful kind of space to breathe for the rest of the piece.
It's good because it all, you know, on a sunny day you get this wonderful blue glow with these little red dots around, which are really sweet. So
and the symbolism, is that an acorn or is it a?
It is indeed, yeah. This was the idea that this is a clear blue sky, and somehow out of this clear blue sky comes an acorn or an idea, and it sets off a spark, and it's like that. Then you're off. I think the wonderful thing about one of the projects that I showed you earlier at Bracknell at South Hill Park Art Centre was from a watercolour design. So that meant mark making was final. You did something and that's it, or you start all over again. Whereas the computer came in and there was too many choices, too many things to. But I think over years you get to sort of work with that. There's so many projects that actually you think, if we had a little bit more money, but you think actually the challenge is we haven't got any money and we want to make this look fantastic. We want the wow. We want it to be, we want it to endure. We want it for people to like it in years to come. And it's got to perform different things. So you learn with your materials what works best, I guess. Recently, I've been asked to do a number of things in different materials. So I entered a competition in America, in Florida, for the convention center in Fort Lauderdale, and it was the call was for terrazzo floor, but the building has lots of glass, and I thought if I enter this, I'd convince them that they need some windows, and with the light that they have there, it would be fantastic. And I got on a shortlist. And I thought, wow, okay, let's have a look. Where are the drawings of the windows? And they said, no, we want you to do the floor. We said the floor. But would you try it? And I said, yeah. And I was lucky, very lucky. I won the competition and we're making it right now. So, and it's enormous. It's an enormous project with terrazzo, which is a new material for me. Another one was a large-scale project in Oklahoma City, a parking garage at the convention center there. And it was for plastic, polycarbonate tiles on glass. The architects had worked out what they wanted to do, and it was another competition which I was very lucky to win. And it's amazing what you can do with small. I think we used just 15 colours in the end, and this scheme has. I don't know what it is. It's something like 88,000 small polycarbonate coloured tiles that are all suspended on stainless steel cables, which is, it's kind of glass, but it was a different material. So I'm kind of interested in different materials. Mosaic, as I mentioned before, I've recently been to Otranto and saw this wonderful medieval mosaic, a complete church in mosaic, and just fell in love with it and thought I've got to try that. I don't know how I've never never tried that before. So that's another thing.
Is it architectural work that really floats your boat?
I personally, I like architectural work. Yeah, I like the kind of response to a brief. I've recently done a couple of things at the British Glass Biennale that are for exhibition, which is fun. I do love the idea that you are responding to something. And I remember a few years ago, I didn't have much work on, and someone was asking me, do you get out of bed in the morning if you if you haven't got any work? And you think, yeah, of course you do. There's lots of things to play with, but I do love it. I love the idea of having these kind of boundaries and thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And
so you did touch on times when there isn't any work. Being a professional artist is a hard road to travel. Have there been challenges along the way, and how have you dealt with those?
Yeah, and I think, as you know, it must be the same for most artists in glass. That things come and go, and sometimes you can be incredibly busy, and sometimes there's nothing to do. And hopefully, over the years, that has kind of like leveled out, and it's been quite an even sort of world. But it does happen. Yeah, it does happen when all of a sudden there's no work. I think. Then there's all the questions that come with that. Thinking, is that me done? Am I all washed up? And should I be, maybe looking to drive an Uber or I don't know. But then I don't know. So then something happens, and you think you just get lucky, or sometimes some things come back from years ago. Someone will come back and say, you left a brochure with us once, and would you be interested in this? But I've always stuck at it. I'm sort of thinking that I can't do anything else. So it's kind of, and there's nowhere to teach anymore unless you do it yourself. And but it's a difficult one. But I guess I've been very lucky. But I do apply for as many projects as I can. But sometimes the more and more involved you get with projects, the more easy it is to take your eye off the ball and not look for work and not look for what's coming up. And or sometimes you can get a couple of jobs on the trot where people have come to you and you think, oh well, okay, this is how it is now. And the first job I got, like I said, from the Crafts Council was one where they'd offered it to me, and I thought, oh, this is great. When are you getting me my next one? And, and I never heard from him again. But it's up and down, and yeah.
So what are the big things that you've learned on your stained glass journey?
Not to take too many things for granted. I mean, and not to be too complacent, because sometimes things you put a lot of time and effort into a lot of design work sometimes, and they just don't happen for one reason or another. They just don't happen. So it's always a good idea to have plenty of irons in the fire, as it were, because you never know. But I think also not to get, as we touched on before about when things get quiet, not to be that worried. Look at it as a time when you can relax and do something. Play with your time, or go and do some research, or learn something new, because it may not last forever, but it's a time to be used. So, and they are frequent. They're frequent, those times.
So what advice would you offer young artists just starting out now?
I think the biggest thing is tenacity. I think keep at it, and I think the more and more you knock on people's doors, the more and more rejections you get. But they're usually comparable, in scale.
And I'm just thinking, as you're talking about these very large scale projects, moving into using other materials like digital printing, maybe screen printing, those kind of things. It's moving away from the glass, the essence and the character of glass as well. How do you feel about that transition where you're working with different techniques to get an end result?
I'm trying to embrace it. I keep on about antique glass, and I love it. It's my passion, and it would be my go-to material, absolutely. However, with regard to things like budgets and timescales and sizes of things, sometimes it's I think rather than to say no, to try and work with the technology that we have and produce something that's going to work in glass. And but I suppose I miss the tactile working on glass, because that's another thing that a long time ago I kind of gave up the studio like you have, and said, well, okay, I can play with stuff, but I became much more interested in the design side of things. But I love the fact that I have had this kind of background, that I know what it can do and what it can't do, and I know. Whereas I see lots of design work in the studios, particularly in Germany, that are done by artists who work in all sorts of different media, and they're fantastic results. They're lovely because they don't know what glass can do and what it can't do. They're not like me, just sort of fumbling around in the dark. They're actually totally unaware of what can happen, and some of the results are amazing. It's wonderful to see, and but I think that glass itself, the printing on glass, it's kind of, it has its own place. It has its own place, but it's a kind of a compromise, I guess. It's kind of a compromise, yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about seeing the larger studios, especially in Europe, where you're introduced to a variety of artists, some of whom may have never worked with glass before. It's really interesting to see a different eye, or maybe a painter's eye, or a sculptor's eye, or somebody who works in another material come to glass, what they can bring to glass. I think there's always the potential of a breakthrough, isn't there? Seeing glass describe something in a new way. Yeah, and it's not just that. I think also that the work in the studio, most of the studios I'm working in are in Germany, and I don't speak German, although I've tried. But they all speak wonderful English. But if they start speaking German, I know something's gone wrong, or something's broken, or something. But usually, sometimes there are accidents that happen, and things come out of the kiln, and you think. But because you're there, you actually say, "Hang on a minute, that could be interesting. What happened there?" And by trying to sort of understand the process, you then begin to look at things in a different way. And it happens the same with different artists, that they said, we want to do this, and it's up to the studio to make some suggestions. And sometimes when I'm personally there, it is very much like, what's going on over here? You know, hang on a minute, let's see what's. We've talked about a little bit in the past about the education or the way that the universities and art colleges are not teaching applied arts anymore, and we're kind of losing our skill set here in the UK. We're having to go to places like Europe for these larger scale things. Do you ever see that reversing, or what are your thoughts on sort of losing those manual skills that we've traditionally had here in the UK?
Yeah, I do think it's a real shame, and I know that those colleges and that approach, hands-on with materials, etc., took generations to build, and it seems to have been lost very, very, very rapidly. And it is a shame. It was my first ideal was that I would leave college, have my own studio, do my own stuff, work on small projects. It would all be happy ever after, and nothing like that happened at all. And today, and I think, as we were saying before, you know, the principle was fantastic, and we got a grant. We actually got paid to go to college for 3 years, 5 years, however long, you know, if you were going to do a master's, etc. But then it's kind of then you earn your money, and you're a taxpayer, you're a part of society. But that's all changed now, and I don't know how. I don't know whether I would have gone to college if it was today. It's a very difficult thing to do, and but I don't know if there's a way back. There'll be a new way. There will always be a new way, and I think, as I said to you before, there are projects out there. There are architects that don't know about this yet. There are architects that, when they see the sorts of ideas and things that can be done, are absolutely blown away. And you know, they think, how did I miss this? How have I never seen this sort of thing before? And they can't wait to include it in their buildings. And there will be work to come. There will be work for people in the future, and yeah, it'll be difficult, but I think people will find a way. Young kids will find a way. They always do.
Martin, it's been fantastic to spend some time with you today. Thanks so much for being generous with your time, and it's just great to see your working environment here.
Likewise, Derek. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you.